Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Hopping on here to take a look at what happened today, right? Price action. Just go over a little market recap as we head into tomorrow. Really going to start here on this hourly because that's what we were utilizing here this morning. We had this bear or bullish fair value gap, right? This discount fair value gap here on the hourly that we had traded into, and that's really what we were looking to react off of. So as we go to lower time frames, you'll see the sell side here as well. But we also mentioned this bearish. So this is our opposing premium. We spoke about if we can close above that, we would look for price to continue to expand. And that's really what we played off here this afternoon. And we'll share the other trade that we took during the PM session. But yeah, if we take a look at the AM, remember we're using this 1 hour fair value gap. So we'll label that as we work down in the time frames. We'll start here on the 5 minute. So we got here at about 9:30. We had mentioned, we'll actually go straight to the 1 minute. So prior to 9:30, we had created this low inside the 1 hour fair value gap, and we had cleared yesterday's low already. We spoke about how we wanted to see at 9:30 now another move below these lows that we had created to basically run these as a short-term low. We would then wait for a bullish signature and then go long off of that. For us, that bullish signature became this inversion. Because if we look at this here, if we're expecting price to react off the 1 hour fair value gap, this is the last premium fair value gap that gets created as we deliver into the 1 hour fair value gap and as we deliver into the sell side. So that becomes our really flip point. We said that as soon as we can close above that fair value gap, we'll look to use it as a entry signal. Right, so we can kind of throw on the executions here now. As we close above the inversion, right, creating the actual inversion, we go ahead and go long right away using the consequent encroachment here. So now we use that stop was under previous day low. We understand we've already cleared the liquidity. We have no need to go below there. And if we look within this price action, we noted how there was really no inefficiencies, right? It was all balanced back and forth, back and forth. So when we expand above this fair value gap here, there's really no need to return below that. And that becomes our support point for the entire morning. At this point, once we get in, we understand more than likely it's going to be a little choppy, right? Tuesday without any high impact news. So we understand we're just going to have to sit through this. We didn't want to sit through it holding our full position, so we go ahead and close at a opposing premium. Right, so we close a little bit of the position here in profit as we create the bearish fair value gap and trade back up into it. But we're still really holding, understanding that this fair value gap and this low specifically should not be broken. We spent a lot of time going back and forth. Ultimately, we reach up into our new day opening gap where we took our first partial. And now we were expecting to see these highs here. Right, and ultimately these highs here, which became London's highs, equal highs, straight edges tend to get ran through. That becomes our liquidity. And then pair that with that 1 hour inefficiency that we had up here as well. So that was our objective. We were just aiming for low hanging fruit. So first taking partials at new day opening gap. And then again, as we cleared this little short-term swing point. We'll notice, however, that once we start getting above these premiums, right, so the new week opening gap, once we close above it here, it offers us support, which is nice. We mentioned how this would be a protected low. Same thing once we get above new day opening gap here with this candle closure. Notice how we then use that as support before we ultimately clear the buy side and hit that 1 hour fair value gap. You notice that once we hit that, slight retracement before giving one more run to clear just short-term buy side and return into the high of that 1 hour fair value gap. So now that we've hit the high of that, right, we retrace just back into new week opening gap, new day opening gap. So we're simply returning into this range from low to high that we formed during the morning. We're retracing into that, near its equilibrium. Right, no surprise, we can pull that up. We see how price kind of returns into that, spends a lot of time in here, just bouncing between that, the new week opening gap, and the new day opening gap here. So a lot of PD arrays, which is why we see price spend a lot of time in this area. As we head into the afternoon now, we'll kind of share, right, the trade that we took here. So once again, we formed this little setup similar to what we saw here inside the new week opening gap the first time. Same idea, where we create an intermediate swing point. We have a short-term low that gets cleared. We're then watching that premium fair value gap to see if we can invert it. Right, that's this fair value gap here. It's paired with the new day opening gap. So if we can close above both of these, that makes sense that we would expect price to continue to expand. Right, you'll notice that we close above the inversion, and from there, we don't even come back into it. So once we get above midnight, we just continue to rip back up for that high that we created during the morning session. At this time, right, I'm still really expecting bullish delivery. And so that's why we are looking for this bullishness to continue. What we utilize now here is the 5 minute. So if we go to the 5 minute quickly, we have this 5 minute fair value gap. So as we were approaching power hour, we were kind of watching this, right? We noticed that we had a 5 minute fair value gap here. We trade into the low of it. We then close back above. Once that happens, we understand this becomes balanced. So the entry came right on the high of that 5 minute fair value gap. Right, we'll go back and look at the 1 minute. You can see we're kind of utilizing, right, same idea. Inside the 5 minute here, there's a 1 minute. So we're still waiting for the confirmation. That comes in the form of this candle, right? We could reprice into the low. Once we close back above, we're okay to go ahead and use that 5 minute. I wanted to see the actual 5 minute candlestick close first and show a willingness to find support, right? So we didn't enter on this candle. Instead, we entered on this second tap here. We can head back to the 1 minute. For us, we just aimed for some low hanging fruit, right? Which became these equal highs like this. So we don't even capture the second leg of that move, which was obvious to see. But for us, we're still content, right? We catch a nice move here using the 5 minute, stop below the swing point. We have no need to reach back below this low after we've already respected the 5 minute fair value gap. And from here, we get a pretty clean run straight up into that buy side. We were following this, however. All right, another opportunity does present itself. This is that 1 hour fair value gap we were speaking about earlier. So as we displace through that, notice how we leave behind a bearish or a bullish fair value gap, excuse me. So not only do we leave it behind, the consequent encroachment is the exact consequent encroachment of the 1 hour fair value gap. We often say things like that aren't random. So we can expect that this would be an area that holds us as support, and that would be a clean area to look for a second entry, right? Consequent encroachment or the high of it, either way, right? Strong area of support, you can use both. You can even use the 1 hour in itself. So however you'd like to frame your risk, all of these gave you the opportunity. And from here, you could just target, right, an intermediate swing point. So we do fall short of previous day high, but this is why I often like to aim for partials at inter-range liquidity points, because then we would have been able to take off partials here at this high. So overall, pretty clean delivery this afternoon for bullish plays. As we mentioned, only afternoon trade was the 5 minute play. We did not capitalize on this, but that's fine. Right? We were content with what we had this afternoon, as well as the nice trade that we shared this morning here. This was a little more, we'll say, high resistance, right? A lot of give and take before it finally moved into our given direction. Whereas this afternoon, a lot more low resistance, quick displacement, retracement, followed by another quick run up into our buy side liquidity. As we go ahead and take a look now really at what we can continue to expect to see, right? As of now, everything right here is pretty bullish for me, right? You can see on the, let's go to a higher time frame. On a 15 minute, we've cleared sell side liquidity here. We then displace, right? We have the breaker that we held at. We then displace again, holding at a bullish fair value gap. So we're really just holding discounts. Let's clear all this up. I would look for us to attack really external range. So daily high, and then from here, we'll just look to continue to reach potentially into last week's high here as well. So I like the idea of continuing bullish, but we'll just continue to see if we can't take advantage. So overall, choppy morning, precision elements are still found if we know what to look for. And then the afternoon offered us a pretty clean cut, right, bread and butter setup to deliver into our buy side liquidity. We'll see what we get tomorrow. We'll be back at the same time as we were this morning, 9:25 Eastern. So until then, have a good rest of the night, everybody, and we will talk in the morning. Take care.